Hello, this is the Sarah Cato Show. Today we have with us Joseph Nunez. Joseph is a human resources specialist and is here to talk to us about a style of interviewing that is becoming more and more widespread. A style of interviewing referred to as behavioral or behavior-based interviewing. Joseph, thank you for coming in today to talk to us about behavioral interviews.
You're very welcome, Sarah. It's nice to be here.
I've heard a lot about behavioral interviews over the last few years. Can you tell me how they are different from what we might consider traditional interviews?
Sure. Well, I guess first of all, I should say that traditional interviewing focuses a lot on the actual skills required in a job. Interviewers might ask about an applicant's specific experience related to a job's requirements, or ask the applicant to describe the skills he or she has. In contrast, a behavioral interview focuses on the applicant's recent behaviors. The thinking is that this will help the employer predict an applicant's future behavior.
That's a lot to take in. So, in other words, the interviewer asks for examples of how a job applicant has behaved in different situations in the past.
That's right.
Can you give me a couple of examples?
Okay. Well, a traditional interview question might be something like, "This job requires someone with good teamwork skills. Can you tell me about your experience working in teams?" But if the interviewer followed a behavioral interview model, her question might sound something like, "What did you do in your last job to contribute toward a good teamwork environment?" Both questions are about teamwork, but they ask the interviewee to respond in very different ways.
Ah, I see. The behavioral interview question sort of forces the interviewee to describe examples of behavior rather than just stating that they have the skills or experience for the job.
Yes, that's it exactly. In a behavioral interview, you really do have to be a lot more specific about what you've done in your job that demonstrates that you have the skills you say you have.
So what should applicants do to prepare for this kind of interview?
Well, first of all, it's important to say that interviewees do need to prepare. They should spend some time thinking about their strengths and skills. And then, and this is important, they need to think about examples of when they used their skills or showed their strengths.
So how would applicants describe these examples?
Well, they should think about these examples as stories. If they tell a good story with a beginning, middle, and end, and if the example is specific, then that is a good response. And keep in mind that a good story doesn't have to be long. Each response should only be about 3 to 6 sentences or no longer than about a minute and a half in length.
That's a lot to remember. Do you have tips you can pass on about how to answer an interview question with a story?
Well, I like to think of each answer in 3 steps. First, describe the specific situation. Second, talk about what you did in this situation. That's the middle of the story. Finally, talk about the result or relevance of what you did. This is commonly referred to as the Sar Strategy, where the acronym SAR stands for situation, action, and result.
Okay, that kind of sounds complex. Can you give us an example of a question and a response?
Sure. Let's say the interviewer says, "Give me an example of a situation in which you had to deal with a difficult customer or client." First, you need to briefly present the situation. Like, a customer wanted to return an item, but because of the return policy, I couldn't refund her money. She became irate in front of other customers. So that's the first step. Second, you briefly describe what you did. For example, I apologized to the customer and calmly explained the store policy. When she remained angry, I gave her a copy of the store policy and the contact information of the head office in case she wanted to make a formal complaint. So that's the action part of the SAR strategy. Last, you describe the result. In this case, the customer calmed down and apologized for her angry outburst.
Oh, I see now. That makes it more clear to me. So our time is almost finished, but before we let you go, do you have any other tips for our listeners when they answer these kinds of interview questions?
Well, The most important thing is to think through how you have demonstrated your skills in your work experience. Preparing in advance will help you feel confident about responding to behavior-based interview questions. Also, try to stick with a conversational style. You don't want to sound like a robot. You want to express confidence and ease in an interview.
Well, thank you very much for this information. I know I have learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have too.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.